welcome back. I am D.L. White, Atlanta-based author of romantic fiction featuring Black men and women. My work ranges from upmarket women's fiction, aka chick lit, to steamy, sexy romance. Pick up books by D.L. White in ebook on most sales platforms. Select titles are available in paperback and audio at booksbydlwhite.com/books. If you'd like to be a part of my newsletter community, join us at booksbydlwhite.com/newsletter. And if you'd like to be part of our bookish community, or if you're already ready to talk about the Never List, join me in my new reader community, booksbydlwhite.com/community. Look forward to seeing you. I'm using the BookCast as another avenue to reach readers and bring work to you via a channel that speaks to you, literally. Last season, I used the BookCast to practice for this season by reading my holiday shorts, which are currently available on Amazon Kindle Unlimited. Side note, they'll be coming out of Kindle Unlimited in early October, so if you want to read them as part of your subscription, you should grab them now. I will be releasing them all widely this winter, so exciting. And speaking of subscription programs, if you're a member at Audible Escape, you have until November 1 to listen to any of my titles enrolled in that program because it's going away. So hop on that. I suppose it's fortuitous then that I've decided to release the Never List via BookCast initially. I hope to package this up into an actual audiobook and release it wide, but my initial idea was to read this book in serial fashion just for some fun, something different. Some of my titles will still be professionally read and produced, but for this title and for short fiction, it just makes sense to do it this way. I love a new project, and this is going to be fun. I want to jump in here with a couple of caveats. I am not a professional audiobook narrator or producer. I don't have a fancy studio. I do have a mic, but it appears to be complete trash at the moment, and so I'm using an alternate recording device. You may hear cars driving by. You might hear people in the background. I'm doing the best I can with what I've got. I don't want to put off the project any longer simply because everything's not perfect. So let's jump into season 2 of the BookCast, a production of Books by D.L. White. I'll be reading the Never List, which is now available at e-retailers everywhere, booksbydlwhite.com/books. If you go to that page, all my books are listed there. Just click on the cover. It will take you to a link where you can buy that book anywhere you please. Before I begin with the blurb, I want to issue a content warning, which I don't normally do because I don't write material that really needs one, but thought it would be useful to mention that this book has an attempted mugging in Chapter 1. Never fear, my heroine is victorious and unharmed. She is rescued by our hero. And there are mentions of this attempt throughout the book, as well as my hero's sister is diagnosed bipolar disorder, and I don't feel comfortable diving really deeply into something I have no experience with, so there are references to her illness, mostly from the point of view of Trey dealing with improving his relationship with his sister. Lastly, there will be a copy of Esme's actual list in the book, as well as on the blog, probably just about everywhere, but in the interest of not being very boring, I'm not going to list them all here on the BookCast. I believe my prereqs are filled, and we can start talking about the Never List. This is a super cute book that I started writing, I want to say maybe 4 years ago. I do not remember why I started writing it. I don't know where the idea came from. That's how old this thing is, but I thought, well, it's summer. Let me just pull out something cute and fun, and it was just supposed to be like a little cute summer novella, and no, it quickly grew into like a full-figured, very curvy adult romantic novel. But I'm super, super proud of this book. It's a little bit autobiographical. I won't get into the weeds on it, but this book means a lot to me, and so I hope that readers love it. I hope readers laugh at it. I hope readers enjoy my characters, and that this becomes one of your favorites because it's already one of mine. Let's read back cover copy and then begin. The slowest burn. Late bloomer Esme Whitaker has held out on an important right for just the right person at just the right time. She's had a recent glow up full of accomplishments to be proud of, but there's still a list of adventures to cross off before her 40th birthday. Take a flight, swim in the ocean, eat exotic food, have sex. On the cusp of her 40th birthday, the time is now. All she needs is the right man. When a date with a potential love interest goes very, very wrong, she's rescued by a tall, bearded, stylish gentleman. What could have been wonderful fizzles instantly. The vibe between them crackles with animosity. Sometimes, though, you get a second chance to make a first impression. Trey Pettigrew is a man with a dream and one job: to keep his father, CEO of Pettigrew Construction, happy during recovery from a heart attack. What should have been a simple acquisition turns sideways when Trey is forced to leave the negotiation table to thwart an attack on a sharp-tongued but intriguing woman. In a twist of fate, the specialist hired to put his acquisition back on track is the woman that Trey rescued. Esme is bright, tenacious, and unrelenting at the contracts table. With her dangerous curves etched into his memory, Trey hopes to make up for his behavior the first time they met. But her no-nonsense attitude about after-hours pursuits puts that idea to bed. Until Trey happens upon her never list. Can two people, each determined to accomplish what they've set out to do, find a way to meet in the middle? Well, you know what they say. Life is what happens when you're busy making plans. Let's get into it. As a reminder, there's a content warning for this chapter and the next for an attempted robbery, assault, and references to this attempt. Chapter 1, Esme. Try online dating, they said. It'll be fun, they said. I rolled my wrist to glance at my watch for the fourth time in the last half hour, staring out of a fogged-over window with my arms folded over my chest. From my seat at a cozy table for two, my view was a parking lot. A light rain hadn't kept the residents of Vinings, Georgia, an Atlanta suburb, from frequenting neighborhood eateries and watering holes arm in arm, with peals of laughter rising over piano music droning from the speakers above my table. I watched them hop over puddles to make their way to the strip mall filled with burger joints, a vape store, an Asian market, and bistro, a wine shop serving small plates with accompanying wine flights, steamed mussels, crab fondue, and stuffed mushrooms served with white wines, garlic chicken lettuce wraps, stuffed pasta shells, and bruschetta served with reds. I wish I'd declined this date invitation. It was too late in the evening. I had TV shows to watch. I just met him on a dating site. Wasn't it too early to meet a man in person? But my cousin O'Neill talked me into agreeing to meet him. Now I was sitting in a dimly lit romantic restaurant, alone. This was a bad idea, I muttered aloud. Tried to tell O'Neill, but you can't tell him nothing. Excuse me, ma'am. I nearly jumped out of my skin at the interruption of my low-volume tirade. A man stood next to my table, bent slightly toward me. I took in his fresh cut, the lush curls of his beard, soft brown eyes, and mahogany skin. I loved the scent of a man, and this one smelled delicious, like sandalwood, rich vanilla, and laundry detergent. Coupled with his subtly expensive taste in fashion, wool slacks, crisp button-down shirt, dark jacket, I could forgive him for being so very late if he was my date. But he looked nothing like the photos of the man I'd chatted with the evening before. Do you mind if I take this chair? He gripped the seat across from me, already beginning to cart it off with him as if I'd said it was fine. We're at the table behind you. I squinted at him. It wasn't like I was using it. It was the audacity to assume he could just take it. Yes, I said, louder than I'd planned. I mind very much, actually. He straightened, his actual height taking my breath away. I stood 5'9" and relished a bona fide big and tall man, not a man who bragged about his height and wouldn't make it over 6 feet unless he borrowed Prince's heels. I only need one chair, and you're alone. I'm not alone. He glanced around, dramatically searching one end of the restaurant and then the other. You look alone to me, ma'am. I bristled. Who are you calling ma'am? I'm obviously waiting for someone. How would I know? Whatever. He emitted a grunt that assured me he was not pleased. I could not manage to care. You could have just said no. All that attitude was unnecessary. Why wouldn't I have an attitude with the man who walked up to my table and started taking chairs? Where's my date supposed to sit? What date? He snickered, then went back to his table. The waitress stopped to ask again if I wanted to order anything. I handed her my glass, asked for a refill and the check. I'd take my time, waiting to slip my credit card into the slot, then drawing out, signing out the slip. Maybe, in that amount of time, my date would show. 10 more minutes, and I'm out of here, I promised myself. I'm missing my shows messing around with this fool. Usually a Thursday night, really any weeknight, meant a swing through somebody's drive-thru or placing an order for delivery and hours of escapist book and TV. I rarely missed my shows. I was more of a homebody than most homebodies, but as my mother phrased it during our most recent conversation, she from the Phoenix Omni Resort and Spa, me from the swing on the wraparound porch, the man of my dreams couldn't fall into my lap if I didn't take my lap somewhere. My cousin, best friend, and housemate, O'Neill, piled on, encouraging me to try meeting new people through a website. You don't do bars, you don't do clubs or sports. You can sift through men and meet somebody virtually before you have to meet them in person. After some arm twisting and internet searches, O'Neill created a profile for me on Black Singles Match, the most reputable site with a robust personality assessment and what seemed like the least number of shady profiles. Almost immediately upon pimping myself out to the world at large, I'd begun receiving messages. Hey, sister, you are cute. Call me. Call him? I'd asked O'Neill. For what? Just straight from the internet? What are we supposed to talk about? Ignore him. He don't want nothing but nasty chat, and you... He cut himself off before completing his thought. Anyway, who's next? I must know you, my queen. I will like for you to be my wife. Please contact me immediately. Next. Hey, sexy. Welcome to the site. I like what I see, and I know you'll like my 9 inches of long, hard... Damn! O'Neill cringed. I'm sorry. I didn't know it was this bad as... What do you mean you didn't know? You put me on this site and you've never used it? O'Neill's grin was as wide as it was salacious. I get plenty of women the natural way. I'm calling it. I'm done. I deleted each message that had popped into the box, but for every note I deleted, 2 more arrived. It's like feeding time in the Shark Tank. I'm fresh meat. Wait. O'Neill stabbed the monitor with the tip of a finger. That dude in the suit, 3rd one down. Click on him. I cleared the screen until only one chat request existed. What's up, beautiful? I'm Chris. How are you this evening? Full sentences and no innuendo. I'm in love. Hold up as... Check his profile, urged O'Neill, pointing to the link. I did so and was rewarded with a photo of a broad-shouldered, bona fide cutie in a designer tuxedo. His smile was wide and pearly white, his skin a perfect toasted almond, his hair a thick mane of locks that went past his shoulders, and his eyes were a deep, soulful brown. I skipped down the list of attributes. 6'3", works in finance, lives in Atlanta Metro, single, no children. The caption read, my cousin's wedding. I clean up nice. He's not an ugly-ass mofo. See what this Chris is about. O'Neill picked up a bowl of roasted edamame and balanced it on his top belly as he slumped in the chair next to me. Hello, Chris, I typed, after accepting his chat request. I'm Esme. Hello, came the response, seconds later. How's your Wednesday coming along? An hour later, O'Neill was making appreciative noises at Instagram models, and I was still chatting with Chris. Like me, he worked with numbers, so he was analytical, but also funny, getting in a quip or two during our spirited back and forth. I was comfortable enough to share details about life, work, family. Chris was warm, but less forthcoming. I didn't want to push, though. I would learn about him as we got to know each other. I hope I don't seem too forward, he wrote, but I wondered if I could buy you a drink tomorrow. The message came through after a longer than usual pause on his side. My stomach dropped, and I clutched O'Neill's arm, making sure he read the message. He wants to meet, I squeaked. Tomorrow? Okay, he said. Pick a place. Tell him to meet you. Then he went back to his phone. My jaw dropped. Seriously? Would you meet a woman that you just... Never mind. I know the answer already. It's a public place, as meet him. Let him buy you a drink, plus you won't be sitting at home. Win-win. He pointed at the screen, then waved at the keyboard, gesturing for me to type. You'll be fine. Do it, Ez. Hey, no pressure, Chris had typed, after I didn't answer right away. I'd like to talk face-to-face, you know. See if there's chemistry. Chemistry. Tuh. I checked my watch, again, glaring out of the window as if I could summon my date to show. Then at the open app in my phone, my inbox was a desert. I was sure I saw a tumbleweed blow through there. No messages. No, Hey, running late, I'll be there in 10 minutes. In fact, Chris hadn't been online all day. I had to tell myself what I hadn't wanted to tell myself. I'd been stood up. I slipped my card back into my wallet, anger roiling anew that I'd spent $23.99 on a little beef crostini appetizer and a drink that I didn't even like. I could have bought a bottle of wine at Publix and had a dollar menu dinner on my couch and enjoyed it more. I stalked out of the restaurant, already mentally delivering the scathing speech I would give him when he inevitably contacted me. They always came back. I crossed the parking lot, hearing only the staccato rhythm of my heels. The sound of sneakers scuffing pavement caught my ear too late to adjust for the impact of a body-crushing blow. Someone was all over me, grabbing for my bag, attempting to yank it away. I screamed, holding onto the straps with both hands. He pulled. I pulled harder. He yanked. I yanked harder. Items flung from inside the bag and scattered across the parking lot. He gave a hard pull and grunted, "Let go, bitch! No, mother..." A fist came into contact with the side of my head. My vision dimmed. The parking lot spun. I felt my grip loosen. Through the ringing in my ears, I heard the restaurant door swing open, footsteps, a cacophony of garbled voices, then a scuffle, forceful grunts, and a meaty crunch that could only be a fist meeting a mouth. I felt the thud across the pavement as a body hit the ground inches away. I pushed myself up to get a good look at the man that laid on the pavement, arms and legs splayed. He wore dark jeans and sneakers, and someone had pulled his hoodie back. I didn't recognize him, but I knew who he was. I'd have laughed if my head wasn't pounding. I hadn't been on a date in years, had never arranged a date on the internet, and got mugged. "Ma'am, you okay?" A figure hooked over me, and a hand entered my field of vision, offering help. I smacked the hand away and maneuvered to my feet. On shaky legs that grew stronger by the moment, I collected the items that had flown from my bag. I'm fine," I stammered. I want to go home." I stuffed my things into the bag and pulled out my keys. I wanted to be where I should have been all night long, on my couch, eating popcorn and watching my usual Thursday night lineup. "Ma'am?" the voice called after me. "The police are on the way." I limped toward my car, parked a few spaces away. My ankle stabbed with every step, and the right side of my face throbbed. Once I reached it, I unlocked the door and fell into the driver's seat. I was still dizzy, but the fuzzy edges were becoming more defined. All I knew was I needed to get out of there. I reached to start the car, but was startled again by a knock at the window. I looked up and winced. It was a guy that had tried to take my chair. I started the car and rolled the window down. "Yes." "Hey, girl," he said, grinning down at me. He leaned against the car, his arm resting on the hood, rather easygoing for having just knocked a man unconscious. "You did a little bob and weave on the way to your car? Are you okay?" "I'm fine, I think. Thanks for your help. That was you, right?" "I was no big thing," he replied. "But I'm not sure you should drive, ma'am. He got you good. Maybe you..." "Stop calling me ma'am," I snapped. "I said I was fine. I want to go home." "Ah, okay. You just always have an attitude." He pushed out a couple of sarcastic chuckles. "Anyway, the police are on the way, and you should stick around." "I'll stop by the precinct tomorrow. I think I know who that guy is. Now move before I run you over." He made a sucking noise with his teeth, but I stepped back. I pulled out of the space and directed the car away from the lump of man still lying in the middle of the parking lot and the crowd that gathered around him. The sky was already glowing with red and blue flashing orbs of police cars approaching. Chapter 2. Esme. By the time I eased the car into the garage, I was lucid and livid. I'd almost been mugged. I knew my mugger, sort of. I should have stuck around to inform the officers at the scene, but I was embarrassed. If I'd been stood up, wasted an entire evening, and was attacked. I was in no mood to tell Cobb County's finest about how someone pegged me right away as the perfect mark. I grabbed my bag, inspecting the straps where he'd pulled it. It was Louis Vuitton, authentic, not a knockoff. I had just decided it was worth every penny that my mother spent on it. I entered the house through the kitchen door and hung my keys on my designated hook. Every light on the first floor burned bright. The TV blared at 2 notches above an acceptable level. And the kitchen was a mess, all signs that O'Neill, a flight attendant for Delta, was home. As if on cue, O'Neill rounded the corner from the living room in his usual at-home wardrobe, a sleeveless tank that showed off his chiseled biceps and loose basketball shorts. When I wore loungewear, I looked like a scrub. O'Neill's effortlessly casual look was gold. All right, give me the rundown. How'd it go? He slid into one of the bar stools that lined the counter while I stood in front of the freezer, letting the cool air soothe my face. The skin around my eye was already puffy, and I considered calling in sick to work the next day. I plucked a handful of ice cubes from the bin and stepped back to let the door close, careful not to turn too far toward O'Neill. I made a non-committal noise as I pulled open a drawer, rooting around for the box of Ziploc bags and dumping the ice into one as soon as I pulled the bag from the box. I don't like that sound. Was he ugly? Bad breath? Did he even look like his picture? He clicked his tongue. You got catfished, huh? I didn't get catfished. I don't think this was technically a catfish. Say more. And why are you putting ice in a bag, Ez? Knowing I wouldn't be able to hide it forever, I turned so my cousin could see the swelling and redness down the side of my face. Oh, shit! O'Neill leaped off the stool, reaching me in seconds. He cradled my face in one hand, poking at the growing lump on my temple with the other. What happened? I winced. Ouch, O'Neill, it feels like it looks. Ooh, sorry. He grabbed the baggie of ice and applied it to the angry red lump. So, what went down? Did he do this? And if so, tell me he's in jail, because if he isn't, I'm about to fuck him up. I don't need you to fuck anyone up. I stepped around him, taking a seat on one stool. O'Neill sat next to me. He got stood up. I got stood up. Kind of. He cocked his head to the side. Nah, men do that shit? He ain't say nothing? I recounted my evening for him, from arriving at Bistro to find that my date wasn't waiting to meet me, to the testy conversation with the man that wanted to take my chair. I sat there for an hour, O'Neill. No messages, no apologies, nothing. When I got sick of waiting, I left. That's when I got jumped. He went for my bag, and when I wouldn't let go, he hit me. I went down, and I shook my head, switching the hand holding the makeshift ice pack. That guy who wanted to take my chair came out of the restaurant and knocked him out with a single punch. O'Neill's eyes were wide and getting wider. What did the police say? You pressed charges, right? I don't know what they said. I left. You left the scene and didn't call the police? They showed up as I was leaving. One more time, you left before you could file charges. And tell them what? I switched hands again, wincing as I applied pressure to the wound. I set myself up to get robbed by some guy I met on the internet. They can write that down in their little spiral notebook and make shitty jokes about the dumbass chick that got played by an internet con man. That you encouraged me to meet, I might add. Hey, don't start. You asked for my help. You helped me right into a concussion. It's not like I introduced you to one of my friends as, so you gonna let him get away with it? No. I exhaled, resigned. I'll call the police station tomorrow. I can give him what I have on him, even though what he told me was probably made up. Maybe they can get something from the website. And there's a guy that beat him down. I'm sure they got his statement. I stifled a yawn, then another. Adrenaline had worn off, and I was delirious with exhaustion. I'm going to call it a night. I have had enough of today. I picked up my bag, headed through the living room and up the stairs. Since I bought the house from my parents while they traveled the country in a decked-out RV, I got the first choice of bedrooms. I took the master because I was home more, but also because it had an ensuite bathroom with a garden tub and jacuzzi jets. I dumped the bag on my bed and headed straight there, salivating at the thought of soaking this night away. I turned on the faucet to fill the tub, tossing in a bath bomb to soften and scent the water, and pinned up my shoulder-length hair. I undressed, unbuttoning the silk blouse I had picked out especially for this date. I peeled off the camisole and the lacy bra that my date would never see, but I felt confident and sexy in them. I unzipped the brand new black pencil skirt that had been rubbed in spots from my encounter with the concrete. Disgusted, I tossed the skirt into the dry clean pile in my closet. As I pushed my panties down my hips, the doorbell chimed. O'Neill's flight attendant friends were prone to visiting at all hours of the night and staying until sunrise. Occasionally, I'd had to step over a slumbering figure sprawled out on the living room floor. I turned off the faucet, stepped into the bath, and turned on the jet, sinking deep into the steamy, soapy water. I exhaled a breath I felt I'd been holding for hours, since before I left work and headed to Bistro, since I arrived and my date wasn't waiting to meet me, and since I had sat alone at a table and 8:30 came and went, 9 o'clock came and went, and there was no Chris. I should have expected something to go wrong. It was too good to be true from the beginning. I'd heard the long-winded moans and complaints about online dating, about how there were more scammers and men looking for sex than the genuine article looking for love. I'd been so smug, having met a handsome gentleman right out of the gate. We'd have a romantic first meeting and look deeply into each other's eyes. Months down the line, he would drop to one knee at some romantic locale to propose. I would say yes, and we would have one of those cute stories you see on commercials that run nonstop from New Year's Day to Valentine's Day. I blew scented bubbles away from my face. Now I had a story about how my first online date tried to mug me. A soft tap-tap at the door interrupted my pity party. "What, O'Neill? There's a man here asking for you." I sat up, searching my brain for any person I knew that would stop by without calling first. I didn't know any men that had a reason to stop by at this time of night. "You sure it's for me?" "He has your wallet. He showed me your ID. His hand's all bandaged up, as I think it might be the dude that knocked that guy out." I could have kicked myself. I hadn't even checked my bag when I got home. I was not in the mood to see or talk to anyone, not even to thank a stranger for finding my wallet and bringing it to me. I don't want to talk to him. Get his number. No, wait, I'm not calling anybody. Get his email address. I'll send him a thank you. "I'm not your secretary." "Get out of that tub and come thank this man for coming to your rescue and delivering your property to you." O'Neill stomped through the bathroom, down the hall, and back downstairs. Defiant, I took my time drying off, throwing some clothes on my body and a pair of slides on my feet, before descending the stairs to greet the Good Samaritan who had interrupted my relaxing bath. O'Neill was on the couch, intently listening to the man comfortably seated in the chair across from him. The TV was still on, but he'd at least turned the volume down. The conversation came to an abrupt halt as I entered the room. As he drew to his full height, I was reminded of his distractingly attractive features. One sleeve was unbuttoned and rolled up to the elbow. One hand was indeed wrapped in gauze and tape. Hi again." "Hello again," he returned, then angled his head to look at my face. "Ooh, he got you good." He raised a hand as if he was going to touch me, but I bobbed out of reach. "Yeah, he got me good. You have something of mine?" He turned to pick up a compact wallet that matched my bag. I saw it after the officers left the scene. It slid under the car. Figured you'd need it. He handed it to me. I unzipped it and looked through it, not even trying to be surreptitious about checking the amount of cash still left and that all the credit cards were still there. Satisfied, I glanced up to find him mid-smirk. "Considering what you've been through tonight, I won't take it personally that you thought I'd take something from you." "Yeah? Well, thanks." And I gestured to his wrapped hand. "Sorry about that. I hope you're not a surgeon or anything." "Nah." He flexed the hand, regarding it with a casual glance. "Looks worse than it feels. I put the responding officer's business card in your wallet. Call him at the precinct. They'd like to know what you know about this guy." His lips bent into a smile as he slid his uninjured hand into a pocket. Something about that smile made parts of my body stand at attention, making me glaringly aware that I'd pulled a thin summer-weight t-shirt over my full breasts. I folded my arms over my chest. "Did you see what happened?" O'Neill asked. "Somebody left the scene, so she has no idea." "Alright, so here's how it went down." His face lit up, becoming entirely more animated. From where I was sitting, my view was a parking lot. I watched her go out. Dude was in black, hoodie, cap, sneakers. He came up behind her, grabbed the bag, but she wasn't letting go. He glanced at me. I don't know what my face said, but he interpreted it as an urging to continue. Anyway, I got two fellas to come outside with me, and right as I opened the door, he pulled his fist back. He mimed the move for O'Neill's benefit. Cold cocked her. Next thing I know, I'm running right at him. Scuffle, scuffle. Then he tried to hit me. I gave him all I had. He was laid out. Didn't come to until the cops showed up and tried to cuff him. It was a trip. O'Neill listened to the story with wide eyes and an open mouth, his gaze moving from me to him and back. Paramedics checked him out. He's fine. They took care of me too, though there wasn't much to take care of. He wanted me to know that he wasn't hurt much. My hero. He's being booked, I'm guessing. I made a statement, so I hope it was enough to keep him there. He eyed me. I stared back, not taking the bait. "Yeah, well, whatever your name is. Trey Pettigrew. Nice to meet you." He extended the hand that wasn't wrapped. I ignored it, leaving my arms crossed. "Trey. I appreciate your help. Thank you for bringing my wallet, but I feel as bad as I look, and I've got a mean headache coming on. I'd like to call it a night." "Yeah, sure. Wanted to make sure you got your wallet. You mentioned that you knew the guy?" I tried to swallow the lump that had suddenly risen in my throat at the thought of Chris and the utter embarrassment of why I was at Bistro. I had a date tonight. I met this guy at an online dating site, but he didn't show, as you know. An eyebrow rose, letting him know that I remembered how rude he'd been. Anyway, it looks like he was waiting for me as soon as I got away from the entrance. That sentence could finish itself. Trey's lips pursed as he nodded. Yeah, the officers at the scene were saying this is the third attack like that this month. This guy lures women out after dark, and then he doesn't show up, and when they leave, they get mugged. You didn't read about that? No, I don't get the mugging times. Where would I read about that? He chuckled, clearly finding humor in my tragedy. I don't know, ma'am. You get the AJC paper, right? Or online? If I was going out with a guy from a dating site, I'd be checking into that kind of thing. Just passing along some knowledge. Thanks for the knowledge. I'm from the school of hard knocks, apparently. I pointed at my face, my swollen eye, my bruised cheek. I'm all learned up for the day. You're just saying goodnight. I stalked to the front door and swung it open. Thanks again. Uh-huh. Trey stood immobile for a few beats before he moved toward the door. You might want to see a doctor, by the way. My brows hiked. About? That stick up your ass. Good night. He stepped out of the house and down the front steps toward a dark SUV parked in the driveway. I wanted to shout a parting shot, but couldn't think of one. Instead, I slammed the door and stomped back toward the stairs. I don't want to see or talk to another living soul tonight. You hear me, O'Neill? What was all that attitude about? He asked, ignoring my statement. He hadn't moved from his spot on the couch where he stared at me like I'd grown another head and antenna. I don't have an attitude. Why does everyone think I have an attitude? I'm going to bed. I huffed, bounding the stairs. Sleep tight, O'Neill called. Tomorrow, we gotta talk. Content warning, there is a reference to mental illness in this chapter. Chapter 3, Trey. Vincent Carl, Vice President of Pettigrew Construction, walked into my office and planted himself in a chair in front of my desk. Without a word, he waited, one foot resting on the opposite knee, a ring-laden finger tapping rhythmically to whatever was playing in his head. As one of Pettigrew's first employees, Vincent was my father's right-hand man. He knew the business forward and backward, but that didn't give him carte blanche over my office. Why haven't I heard about how the meeting went last night? He asked, apparently tired, waiting for me to acknowledge him. I rolled my eyes up, working to keep my facial expression neutral. You could do me the courtesy of knocking and waiting until I give you permission to enter. What if I was doing blow in here? Vincent laughed. Nobody calls it blow, Trey. You're too square for that anyway. I laughed, dropping my pen and gliding my chair back. He had a point. You would never bust in on my father. Don't do it to me. If I have to lock the door, I have keys to every door in this building, but fine. I'll knock from now on. Tell me about meeting with Miller and about what happened to your hand. I flexed my wrapped fingers. My knuckles were still swollen and stiff, but the skin seemed to be already healing. I had all but forgotten about the incident the night before that interrupted a dinner meeting. Last night's tapas and wine affair was supposed to be a casual chat about combining two companies. Pettigrew, a mid-sized commercial construction company, and Miller Design, a small but enterprising boutique architecture firm. More to the point, Pettigrew was about to swallow Miller Design. Whether it would be a friendly or hostile takeover was up to Thomas Miller. I had an altercation. Not with Miller, I clarified. A young lady was attacked in the parking lot, then the ambulance and the police showed up, and I had to give a statement. I found the young lady's wallet and took it to her. Why are you telling me this long, pointless story? Because you asked what happened in my hand. I stood, stretching my arms and twisting side to side. I'd been in the chair for hours. It felt good to get up and walk around, to feel the warm afternoon sun beaming into the office through the window. I moved around the desk and slid onto the corner near the chair where Vincent sat. And because I was stuck with dealing with the police, wanting to reschedule. The downturn of his mouth, which was more pronounced than usual, said Vincent was disappointed. We're no closer to signing, is what you're saying without saying. That is what I'm saying. I pulled at my tie, loosening the knot, then unbuttoned and rolled up my shirt sleeves. I couldn't seem to get used to the uniform of a business professional. Stiff, starched shirts, expensive ties, designer slacks, suit jackets. The transition from field crew to stand-in CEO felt as if it had been overnight. though I'd taken over for Pops a few months ago, I still hadn't settled into the new job. Saul won't be happy to hear that. I'm not looking forward to updating him. That's why I'm waiting. I hope to have better news later today. Any word on the bid for the new county hospital? Vincent shook his head, frowning. I think it's a way off, but we don't want to take chances. We need at least a handshake agreement with Miller. We won't get enough time to merge companies, and we need to say we've built healthcare facilities. I know, Vincent. I know. And of all the acquisition targets, Miller is the most profitable, the most organized, and smack in the middle of our price range. I know that too, I assured him. Why are you repeating things we've said in every meeting? Vincent's face darkened, his cheerful smile gone. Because, son, you don't seem to remember. This was the last project your father launched, and I don't want to see it go down the drain because you're too afraid to make a move. If I need to step in, no. I stood, stepping around Vincent, the chair, and the entire subject. Saul, Pop's Pettigrew, put his heart and soul into his company. He hired me to work summers during high school and while I attended Georgia State University. Once I graduated, Pops began showing me the ropes, teaching me what it took to grow a business and how to keep that business innovating. 3 months ago, Pops collapsed and had to be rushed to the ER. Stress, a high-salt diet, a lack of exercise, and working nonstop for the last 30 years were contributing factors to his heart attack. While he survived, he'd been ordered to take a long break, and my mother was hearing nothing of her husband doing anything resembling work for at least a year. One day I was in polo shirts with the Pettigrew logo on the breast, in khakis or jeans and steel-toed boots, roaming job sites, keeping projects on course. In the blink of an eye, I had a closet full of suits and ties, starched white-collared shirts, and shoes that made my feet hurt. And I was being asked to take over the company, temporarily. That's how he'd sucked me in, promising that it wouldn't be a permanent change, and he would be back to work as soon as he was medically cleared. And if I did well, I could move to any other position in the company. I could even design a new role if I wanted to. Months later, though, the arrangement seemed to change. Pops had been using words like retirement and successor. He'd asked me to think about taking over permanently, a word that would have made me run 6 months ago. And maybe Pops knew that. He also knew I wouldn't want to let him down. I strolled to the end of the office that housed a mini fridge stocked with soft drinks and a cabinet full of liquor. Plucking a glass from the stack in the corner, after a questioning glance at Vincent, I set a second glass on the counter. I chose a nice cognac that had been a gift from a client, splashed 2 fingers of the liquor into each glass. I walked back to the desk, handing Vincent his mid-afternoon taste, as he liked to call it. Vincent was my antithesis. Vincent had a business degree and an MBA and made a career as right-hand man to the CEO of Pettigrew. He lived in satin-lined designer suits, silk ties, and shiny shoes. He'd never worked a crew, never worn a steel-toed boot, never scaled the side of a building, never created art with dirt, bricks, cement, steel. He was all business, proposals, and spreadsheets and phone calls, not hard labor. He set foot on a Pettigrew construction site when it was time to cut the ribbon. It was no secret that he hoped to take over the company when Pops retired. It was also no secret that Pops didn't see it for him and was instead grooming me for the position. True, I wasn't ready to fill such big shoes, but I wasn't ready for Vincent to have an I told you so moment either. Pops asked me to handle this deal. He expects me to make it happen. I'm gonna do it. I might not do it like you want me to or like he'd do it, but it'll get done, all right? So, what now? When's the next meeting? You'll need to have an upside to sell Saul. I took my time answering the question. It wouldn't be the answer he was looking for, so there was no sense in rushing it. We haven't scheduled our next meeting. Miller has been avoiding my calls all day. He hasn't responded to my email. I think he's going soft. Vincent made a sound, an ominous rumbling from his chest. That's bad news, son. I nodded, stroking my beard, sipping my drink. Things would work out. I'd make sure they did. The sun was beginning its descent below the horizon when I pulled into the driveway of my parents' home, a rambling stone structure in North Atlanta, well-to-do suburb, steps away from the lush greens of Atlanta Golf Club. I hadn't made a good out of the SUV before the front door swung open. My mother was barely 5 feet tall, so her sleeveless yellow maxi dress brushed the sidewalk. She grabbed 2 handfuls and pulled it up as she marched along the brick path from the house to the driveway. I was about to call security and have them force you out of the building. You know Saul has to eat on time because of these medications. It's all right, Mom. I'm here. I leaned in to press my lips to a warm cheek. She smelled good, like peaches. I'm sorry for showing up late. I was on a conference call. I wanted to have something good to report to Pops. I bent closer and made a show of taking a long, loud sniff. Did you make peach cobbler? She cocked her head back so she could look me in the face, and so I could see her terse expression, but I detected the smile that wanted to bend her lips. And do you have good news? He's had a nice day. He doesn't need any stress. I know what kind of condition he's in. It's all good news. Now, can we go in? Because I also smell chicken and red potatoes. I sniffed again. Maybe some green beans. She laughed and turned back to the house, putting that big old nose to good use, using it for its God-given purpose. My childhood home had looked like the pages of Southern living for as long as I could remember. The color scheme changed yearly, but purple was Mom's favorite color. This year the decor was lavender and coral with a mint accent. I once called it purple, green, and pink and got a smack upside the head. I followed Mom through the house, letting her lead me like I didn't know where she was going. We ended up in the kitchen, the epicenter of family activity. Mom could burn, as the kids say, and she liked to burn at least 2, if not 3 times a day. Years ago, Pops surprised her with the Viking range of her dreams. She only watched cooking shows on TV, and famous chefs to her were rock stars. She would live in the kitchen if she had her way. I thought we'd eat out on the patio. Saul's already out there. She nodded toward the pair of glass doors off of the kitchen and beyond them to the paver patio. A glass table was already set with 4 places and a sunny sunflower centerpiece. Pops was in his usual chair, content with a book in his hand and a glass of ice water at his elbow. 4 outdoor lamps that flanked the table were already lit, casting a glow over him. Mom. I turned. 4 place settings. Yes, Missy is coming. An eyebrow shot up. I can't give him bad news because he can't handle stress, but Missy is coming to dinner. He said he wanted to see his daughter. I called her, invited her. She said she would come. I set a place. She lifted her hands in a surrender gesture. Come on. We're waiting on the corn. Pop's head rose as I stepped through the patio doors, and he slipped a bookmark into the pages. He had been looking well lately, bright and alert eyes, healthy, deep color, no longer gray and sallow. He was a big man at 6'6", 300 pounds, but the trauma of a heart attack had taken some of his bulk. Over the past few months, he had put weight back on. His silver hair had been cut and lined, and he wore a white pettigrew polo and jeans. Pops was all about not looking like an invalid. As soon as he could dress, he refused to wear the pajamas and fleece pants I'd bought him. Jeans were as casual as he would go these days. Hey, old man. You good? Evening, son. He made a move to stand. I rushed to him, urging him to sit with a clap to his shoulder. He relaxed again, picking up his water glass for a sip. He smiled as he set the glass back down. I'm feeling fine. Glad you could come. I've been alone with your mother all day. Torturous. Mom clicked her tongue while she busied herself around the table. Do not listen to him. The world's worst patient has been in a mood all day. And you're late. She was about to call you a name. Those drugs he's on are making him delusional. Come on, Trey. Sit, eat, talk with your dad so he can stop talking to me. I pulled a chair out and sat. Mom dished up a roast chicken breast, red potatoes, and green beans and set it in front of him. Tell me about Miller, he said, picking up his fork and a knife. Weren't you meeting with him last night? And what happened to your hand, son? I had taken off the bandages to let the wounds breathe. My mother gaped at my raw knuckles and jumped up from her chair. Then she was hovering, poking, and frowning. What in the world? Did you hit someone? Are they still alive? It looks worse than it feels. Yeah, he's still alive and hopefully in jail. I relayed the story to my parents, from the brief conversation with the woman at Bistro to her attack and later finding her wallet and deciding to take it to her. Well, I'm sure she was shaken up. My mother was back in her seat and listening to my story with rapt attention. To have some strange man show up at her house late at night, you're lucky she didn't greet you with a pistol. I laughed at that. The only pistol Esme Whitaker seemed to have on her was her mouth. Anyway, Pops, by the time I finished with the police, Miller had left. Pops grunted, slamming his fork onto the table. Trey, if that bid comes out and we don't own Miller, we won't have a chance of winning it. I know. The constant need to remind me of what was on the line was wearing me thin. Pettigrew was well positioned to win a construction business for a new county hospital if they could show experience in healthcare construction. We built commercial structures, schools, grocery stores, parking complexes, shopping plazas, the occasional office building. The healthcare field required additional steps to meet codes and guidelines. Miller's line of work was clinics and hospitals, not only small buildings but state-of-the-art facilities. With his staff's expertise in software, coupled with the Pettigrew name, we were positioned to bust into a new business vertical. I wasn't about to screw that up if I could help it. I have good news. I spoke with Miller late this afternoon, and we've rescheduled our meeting. I thought he might have been going soft, but he wants to talk contracts on Monday morning. We're on track. At this news, Pops seemed to relax. He picked up his fork and poked 2 green beans on his plate. Maybe I should put Vincent on this one. There are other things you could take care of. Bristling at the suggestion, I bunched up my napkin and tossed it onto the table. With all due respect, Pops, Vincent's just more of a shark, a closer, if you will. You gave this job to me. You told me you wanted me to do it. You wanted my hands in it. He lifted his glass and sipped from it, then licked his lips as he lowered it back to the table. I tell you to set up a meeting and get a deal brokered with Miller. You whittle away that meeting time, sticking your nose in where it doesn't belong. I should have just sat there. That man could have killed her. I hope the young lady is appreciative, because if you've cost us $30 million, Trey is right, Saul, Mom interrupted. We didn't raise him to be a do-nothing type of man. If Pettigrew doesn't get this bid, another one will come along. The vase of flowers and all of the dishes jumped when Pops slammed his fist down on the table. Damn it! When I start something, I finish it. I want this deal done. If you can't do it, I'll bring in someone who can. Do you understand? Yo, I got it, Pops. I reached for him, clasping his shoulder. Breathe. You can't get worked up like this. Saul, please, pleaded Mom. Pops inhaled deeply, closing his eyes. The lines across his forehead regressed. I'm fine, he muttered. I want this shit done, and I don't want to hear excuses. He paused for a breath and then said, I thought you made cobbler. I'll get you a little, and some frozen yogurt. Mom rose from her chair, shooting me a dirty glare for half a second before heading back into the house. I watched her pull a pan of golden brown, bubbling cobbler out of the oven, then reached into the cabinet for 3 bowls. As she opened the freezer door, a willowy figure appeared. My heart seized in my chest as if I was the one recovering from a heart attack. Melissa, or Missy as she liked to be called, had been a charming child, full of personality and boundless energy. She didn't sit still for any length of time. She was disruptive in her classes, aggressive with her friends and classmates, prone to fits of fantasy, and then long, sullen, quiet phases. She rarely slept and often refused to eat, rapidly cycling through moods. She saw family doctors, then psychiatrists, was prescribed one medication and then another. They treated symptoms and tried to curb behaviors, but eventually Missy was admitted to the children's ward at Brownwood Residential Center in Birmingham, Alabama. I saw Missy every few months until she turned 18, when she left Brownwood since they couldn't legally keep her. Missy found life to be difficult given an extensive treatment plan. She couldn't maintain employment long enough to support herself, so Mom and Dad had been taking care of her. Keeping Missy well was as much a stressor as running Pettigrew had been. Missy smiled, wrapping her arms around Mom and chatting away. Her hair was wrapped in a brightly colored scarf. She wore a black tank top, a long black skirt, and sandals. She looked much better than she looked the last time I had seen her, but that had been at the hospital. Missy didn't deal well, emotionally, with Pop's condition. She bounced through the door and around the table to throw her arms around Pops as he rose to greet her. He grinned as if he'd just opened $1 million check and dropped a long, loud smooch on her cheek. How's my baby girl? I'm fine, Pops, she grinned, pulling at her hair. Sorry, it's been so long I've been busy. Busy? You? I couldn't resist lobbing the question across the table. She smirked, taking the seat across from me. Hello, Trey. Missy, how are you? She dished up a plate of now cold chicken, potatoes, beans, and corn. Mom came out of the kitchen to take the plate and warm it up. I'm all right. I'm on a new cocktail of meds. My psychiatrist seems to think, you have to take them on schedule for them to work, right? Her lip curled as she shot an ugly look across the table. Don't start with me, Trey. I'm doing the best I can. A familiar refrain. You don't do much but spend our parents' money. The least you could do is check on your father and not have to be summoned to dinner. Missy stood, leaning across the table, pressing her palms into the glass. Fuck you, perfect son who's never had to deal with anything tougher than a hangnail in his life. You have no idea what it's like to live with this illness. Trey, Melissa. Mom eyed us both with a nod toward Pops, who was already digging into a bowl of warm peach cobbler and a dollop of frozen yogurt. Friday night was the only night Mom would allow him dessert, and he wasn't squandering his portion. I backed down, opting to keep the peace for Pop's sake. A few hours later, I took my leave, giving Pops a hearty handshake and dropping a kiss on Mom's cheek. I climbed into the driver's seat of my SUV and started it up. My eye caught a flash of a card stuck in the cup holder. I picked it up and turned on the interior lights. Esme's Costco membership card. It was the only card besides her driver's license that had a photo on it. I had used it to verify that the wallet belonged to the woman involved in the altercation in the parking lot at Bistro. I should have put it back into her wallet, but I forgot. Besides, it was expired, so I didn't figure she'd miss it. My mind traveled back to the encounter the evening before. Her eyes were full of fire and her mouth full of sass. Full lips, cocoa skin, expressive eyes, and a body that reminded me that I hadn't had a date or anything close to romance since before I took over Pettigrew had my rapt attention. I fingered the card, rubbing my thumb over the image encased in plastic. I wasn't vain, but I saw my face every day. Rugged, a little more handsome than the next guy, warm eyes, friendly smile thanks to 2 years of Invisalign, and a growing wardrobe of fashionable pieces that GQ said a metropolitan man in power should have in his closet. I looked the way I'd aimed to look when I put effort into evolving myself. I spent a considerable amount of time and money molding my body from an unremarkable average shape to a physique that I was proud of. I worked too hard to go unnoticed. I laughed a little, remembering the way her eyes flared and her lips pursed when she spat scathing sarcasm at me. She'd noticed. She didn't want to notice, but she had. I turned off the interior lights, put the truck in reverse, and backed away from my childhood home. Suit yourself, Miss Whitaker. Thank you for joining me for this first episode of Season 2 of the BookCast. Hopefully this whets your appetite for this novel. Again, it is now on sale at most retail outlets, most ebook retail outlets. You can get the links at booksbydlwhite.com/books. Click on the book cover. It will take you to a link where you can purchase this book at any site you choose. I hope you will join me next time for the next batch of chapters of this book. Until then, take care of yourself and talk to you soon.